Murals by Gardener proudly presents How to Spray Paint a Desert Mural in Less Than a Day. Beginning with a typical blank wall here in the metropolitan Phoenix area, we're going to go from this to this. And I'm going to show you how I do it. The basic equipment we'll need is a compressor to push the air, a spray gun, cone filters to filter the paint, some paper towels, of course the air hose to connect the spray gun, and we'll need a smaller airbrush to do the detail work. We need a double action airbrush, and I use the Pache VL. We need to prepare the paint as well, so the paint has to be thinned. From the manufacturer, it's just too thick to get through spray equipment, so we pour it into a smaller container, add some water, thin it to the consistency that is necessary so that it can get through the spray gun, and that will be determined also by how much air pressure your compressor puts out. The rule of thumb is keep it as thick as possible so that it covers, but as thin as you have to so that it can be sprayed. Once you've thinned the paint to the proper consistency, it's very important that you run it through a cone filter before spraying it through your airbrush or spray equipment. The cone filter catches all the little gunk and what I refer to as boogers that form in rubber or latex paint, and so that won't go through the spray gun. You need to filter it before it gets into the spray equipment. Also, always clean the lip of your can because the paint dries quickly, and if you can't keep the lid on solid, you are going to make a mess somewhere along the line when the least appropriate moment. Always clean the lip of the spray can. And now, let the process begin. We begin by painting the sky. The top of the wall has to match the horizon sky behind it, so I use a very light blue paint, top quality exterior latex paint. I also use a board to keep the paint from spraying over the top of the wall because I don't think the neighbors want me to get any paint on whatever might be on that side. It may take 2 or even 3 coats of paint to give a nice blue sky solid, depending on how thick or thin your paint was. And next step, add in the white horizon line. We want to fade that white horizon into the blue sky. And next we step in, we start to paint our gray mountains off in the distance. I use an airbrush for this. Spray some of the clouds, giving them a little gray shadowing as well. And then I lay in my horizon off in the distance, gray mountains far away. Now once I have defined my mountains, the next step is to fill in the area underneath it. So for this I use a larger spray gun, and then I blend the bottom of the wall with a neutral shade of brown, blending it in and giving me a solid coat of brown background. There it is, the background: sky, gray mountains, brown earth. The next step is to paint in the shadowing. Start to sculpt the mountains with a shadowing color. This you can add as many shadows as you want or as little as you like. The further away, of course, the less defined the shadows will be. The closer the mountains are supposed to appear, the more definite you can make the shadowing. It's a layering process. Just a little bit here and a little bit there, and it starts to bring out the idea of distance. Move the darker line in front of that other one, force that one into the background. The more definition comes towards the foreground. The airbrush is an absolutely wonderful tool for getting multiple shades or tones out of a single color of paint. The closer you get, the more saturated the surface becomes. Here's a little trick I use to make the homeowners associations happy, and if they don't like the sky blue, they can have a storm cloud. Kind of merges the neighbor's wall into your wall. Adds a little drama to the overall picture. A little rain coming in over there from the corner. And now we have a storm. Okay, once we've defined our mountains with gray, we leave the background mountains off in the distance and we bring in more of a foreground color. We're still working at the horizon line, which theoretically is still far away. And you'll notice that at the horizon, if you look at a photograph, the colors in front of us tend to merge at eye level or at the horizon line. So it gets a little darker or more concentrated in the color. Adding just light shades of brown to the mountains in the background converts some of our mountains from gray to various shades of brown based on how much gray background was underneath the surface. Now, once we've done that, get out the big guns, put in an earth tone, and we begin to blend the horizon line into the foreground, ultimately bringing our eye right down to the very bottom of the wall, which theoretically is right here in front of us at our feet. Adding a little green coverage, thicker at the horizon line and lighter at the foreground, gives us the idea again of going into the distance. A large spray gun makes a nice smooth blend, where the airbrush would be more for a smaller area definition, such as shadowing in the mountains, but not the filling of the large space in front of us. That's better left to a larger spray pattern. Now we add some of the details, bringing rocks and weeds and cactus plants into the picture. Once the background is complete, it's really just a question of how many cactus, how many palm trees, how many weeds, how many rocks, how many little details, whatever you want. By doing everything in gray first, I knock out the background, or I neutralize the background, since the green paint that I'm going to use for the cactus is not as opaque. It's a little transparent, and as such, if I go over a blue sky and a brown mountain, you are going to see the background sticking through the green paint. So I block all that out with gray. Now I add the color, working the strokes in the same direction that the actual fins of the cactus would go, up and down, up and down. Darker on one side, giving it that shadowy effect. Now, the prickly pear cactus is interesting shapes. And again, start with the gray, basic shapes and patterns, and then add the color. Darker on the same side that the other cactuses were so that the shadowing is consistent to one side and the highlights are consistent to the other side, giving us that sense of roundness. The airbrush again allows us to get in there with little details such as the dots. And soon I will add the little stickers. And at the same time pull back a little bit and you can shadow, just sort of giving it that round three-dimensionality. Very handy tool. The final step in all of this is to add the black. The black adds a definition, not necessarily outlines, but shadowing in the right places, just emphasizing what we've already done, and then bringing in a few extra details such as weeds or just birds in the sky, little things that make a large difference to the end result. So here I am, adding black to what started out as a gray blob of rock. Then we got some brown covering. Then we got some curves to it. And now we're adding definition. And finally we add weeds. Just some straight lines growing up from between the rocks or in front of the rocks. The closer they are to me, normally, the bigger I make them. At the base of a cactus, I would make them smaller. And now we take the same black and we just define the shadowed side of the cactus, adding a few more of the veins, shadowing the underarms, bringing in a little more drama, a little more definition. Add some shadowings to the base and a few more weeds. There we have a good looking little desert cactus. Merge the bottom of the rocks, some weeds, and then shadowing at the bottom. Kind of bonding the rock to the earth rather than having it appear to float on the surface. And there we have it. In no time, we have gone from a blank wall to a full open desert scene mural, all in less than a day. For more information, visit my website at www.muralsbygardener.com and see some other examples of my work. Thanks. I'm Jim Gardner.